Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. All right, good morning. We're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. This is a continuing time of jury trial. The state's still in its case in chief at this time. When we concluded yesterday, we finished with a witness. The court would note that I've been advised all the jurors are again present today and all have completed their juror affirmation. Is that correct, Mr. Bailiff?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for that information. Apologies for the late start this morning. I was meeting with counsel in chambers discussing some scheduling issues and other matters that came up, which we'll take up later today. I'll note on the record that the prosecution is here, all present. The defense as well as the defendant are present as well. And I believe we're ready to have the jurors brought in and have the state call its next witness. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have the jurors brought in then and we'll have a next witness.
All right, please. Jury's out, President County, for Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. Okay, we are on the record on case CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. The case in chief is continuing by the state. The jurors are all present, accounted for, and properly seated. To the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you again for your continued service in this case and for all completing your juror affirmation this morning. We very much appreciate your continued compliance with the admonishments given each day when you go home. With that in mind, I believe the state's got another witness they're prepared to call at this time. Who will be examining the witness?
I will be, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Blake, who will your next witness be?
Detective Nathan Moffett.
All right, thank you. All right, Detective Moffett, before we get started, I just wanted to inquire, have you in any way viewed any of the trial testimony while this case has been proceeding?
No, sir.
All right, not through any internet viewing, reading anywhere, watching any videos of the trial?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for your response. I'll just let you know while you're on the stand, of course, we're making a record of the proceedings with the court reporter, so please answer all questions verbally. Also try to avoid speaking at the same time as anyone that's asking you a question so the record stays clear. With those rules in mind then, Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Sergeant Nathan Moffett, M-O-F as in Frank, F as in Frank, A, T as in Tom.
Where are you currently employed?
The Chandler Police Department in Arizona.
How long have you been employed with them?
I've been with Chandler Police Department for about 21 years.
And your current title is Sergeant?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you held other positions within the department?
I have.
And what are some of those positions?
So I spent, obviously, started as an officer with a previous agency, but when I came to Chandler, I spent about 5 years on patrol, and then I went to criminal investigations as a detective where I was there for about 14 and a half years prior to getting promoted to sergeant.
Do you have any specialized training in order to be a law enforcement officer?
Yes. In 1999, I attended the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy and graduated and became a sworn police officer.
And since then, have you attended additional training as a detective?
I have.
Were you working on July 11th of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall responding to the report of a shooting?
I did. Yeah, I do.
Your Honor, I'm going to just make sure the record's clear. I've objected to this witness previously under Rule 404B of the Idaho Rules of Evidence that anything that happened in Arizona is not relevant for this proceeding in Idaho.
All right, thank you, Mr. Archibald. The court notes the continuing objection to evidence relating to what occurred in Arizona. The court previously made a ruling on that issue in February, and for the reasons incorporated in that ruling, I'll overrule this objection, noting the jurors have been previously also instructed about the limiting nature of this evidence and will be instructed also before their deliberations with an explicit instruction describing how this evidence could be considered. So with that, the objection's overruled, and Ms. Blake, you can continue with your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Moffett, are you aware of who reported that shooting?
Yeah, a 911 call came in from the residence from Alexander or Alex Cox.
Do you recall where you responded to?
Yeah, it was 5531. Oh, geez, the street numbers or the streets escaping me.
South Four Peaks Drive?
Yes, South Fort Peaks Drive. I'm sorry.
And that was in Chandler, Arizona?
Yes, ma'am.
When you arrived on scene, were other officers already present?
Yeah, patrol officers were already on scene when I arrived there.
And is that fairly common to have patrol officers there before detectives?
Yeah, very common.
When you arrived, did you take on a specific role with regards to the investigation?
Yeah, I was assigned role as the case agent.
And is that common practice?
Yes, yeah. On every case like this, we have a case agent and a scene agent.
As the case agent, did you walk through the scene?
I did. I was briefed by patrol, like for their initial investigation or their initial interviews, kind of what they had at the time. I briefly walked through the scene and then I responded back to the station.
When you were on scene, do you recall seeing Miss Vallow or Lori Vallow present?
I did not see Lori present.
Did you see Alex Cox present?
I did.
Did you speak with him on scene?
I did not.
Did you observe Charles Vallow?
I did.
And what did you observe about Charles Vallow?
When I briefly walked into the residence, Charles was deceased on the living room floor.
Did you end up conducting an interview with Alex Cox?
I did, yeah, back at our station.
Is that common to interview individuals back at the station?
Yes.
Did Alex, in fact, participate in the interview?
He did.
Did Alex tell you why he was there that morning?
Yeah, in his interview, he told me that he had spent the night at Lori's house because they planned on doing something the next day.
So he would have spent the night of the 10th?
Yes, the 10th into the 11th. Yes, ma'am.
And did he tell you what happened with regard to Charles getting shot?
Yeah, when we started talking about it, he said that Charles and Lori were in an argument inside the house, and he was back in a bedroom, and he could hear Lori and Charles arguing, and Lori came into his room, and he basically said he intervened between Lori and Charles.
Did he indicate if he knew what the fight or what the disagreement was about?
No, he just said they were arguing.
Did he indicate that he ever saw Charles put hands on Lori?
No.
And did he indicate that he did not see that?
Yeah, he indicated they did not get physical. He never saw it get physical. It was just an argument with Charles following Lori through the house.
Did he say anything about Tylee?
Yeah, he said that when the argument had worked its way into the bedroom where he was at, Lori basically circled around behind him, and he got between Lori and Charles. And he said that Lori came back around him and made her way into the living room or into the kitchen. The living room and the kitchen were divided by a wall, and that at that point in time, Tylee came out of her room when Lori was back in the kitchen.
Did he tell you why or how he ended up shooting Charles?
Yeah, he said that when Tylee came out of her bedroom, Tylee came out of the bedroom with a bat and was basically trying to protect what he was saying is protect her mother, and that at one point in time, Tylee took the bat and kind of poked it out at him. He said at that time, Charles took the bat, and then there was an argument over the bat, and at some point in time, he said he got struck. He, being Alex, got struck by Charles with the bat in the back of his head.
So he described Tylee as having the bat towards Charles pointed out at him?
Yeah, he kind of demonstrated poking it out towards him.
And that Charles had then grabbed a hold of the bat from Tylee?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you observe any injury to Alex consistent with being hit with a baseball bat?
I observed a small laceration on the back of his head. It was a laceration, but it wasn't consistent with being hit extremely hard in the back of the head with a baseball bat by an athletic man.
And have you responded out to battery cases where people have been hit by objects?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it consistent with what you've seen before?
Not with a violent strike.
What did Alex indicate he had done after he shot Charles?
So Alex basically says that the argument happens. He gets hit in the head with a bat, and he goes back to his room and retrieves a gun. And that he came back out into the living room to confront Charles because he was still in the house with the bat. Alex says he told Charles to drop the bat. Charles said, "What are you going to do about it?" And at that point, Alex says he came at him, and then Charles shot him.
You said Charles shot him.
I'm sorry, Alex shot Charles.
And Alex claims Charles came at Alex.
Yes.
And at that point, did Alex tell you how many times he had shot Charles?
He said he was not sure, but he said it was more than once.
Did he tell you where he thought he had shot him on Charles' person?
Yeah, he said center mass, so torso area.
Did you ultimately determine that Charles had been shot center mass?
Yes, Charles had 2 gunshot wounds, one to the chest, one to the lower abdomen.
And after Alex had shot Charles, did he tell you what he then did?
Yeah, after he shot Charles, he said he walked into the kitchen, washed his hands, because he said he had blood on his hands from his head, and then walked back into his bedroom, set the gun down, and then called 911.
Did he tell you anything about where Lori and Tylee were when he shot Charles?
He said he didn't know. He didn't know where they were at.
Did he indicate that they were in the room with him?
I asked a couple different ways, and he just said, "I don't know where they were at at the time of the shooting."
Did Alex indicate anything to you with regard to performing life-saving measures?
I asked if he performed CPR because when he called 911, they asked him to, and he said he had.
Did you ask Alex if he was there to help Lori?
I did. So when I was conducting my interview with Alex, we took a break for a minute. I stepped out because Detective Inklin was interviewing Lori and Tylee, and when I talked quickly to Detective Inklin, who said that Lori asked Alex to stay the night at the house because he was there because she wanted him to be there to protect him from Charles. And so I went back in and asked Alex, actually on more than one occasion, if he had been there, in fact, to protect Lori from Charles, and he adamantly said no. He said multiple times that's not the case.
But Lori had indicated that he had stayed there to protect her.
Yeah, according to Detective Inklin, that's what Lori said.
Did you ask Alex if he had called anyone else before he called 911?
I did. When I was briefed by Detective Inklin about what her interviews kind of had revealed, she told me that Lori told her.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Sustained.
Is it common that as the case agent you speak with other detectives?
Yes,
And do you speak with other detectives about the portions of the investigation that they are conducting?
yes,
And did you in fact speak with Detective Inklin regarding what she had learned from an interview with Miss Vallow?
I did.
Based on what she had learned from the interview, did you ask Alex whether or not he had called anyone?
I did.
And what did he tell you?
He said he had not.
Was it your understanding that that was inconsistent with what Lori had stated?
It was.
I'll object. The only way he can answer that is based upon hearsay.
And Your Honor, it's not being offered for the truth of the matter.
If it's not the truth, then it's not relevant.
I'll sustain the objection.
Did you at some point make additional observations of the scene?
I did.
And did you specifically make observations regarding the scene where Charles was found?
I did, yes.
What observations did you make?
When we were back at the house after we completed our interviews, Detective Coons was processing the scene. I was present while they were processing the scene for evidence. We learned that there was in fact 2 gunshot wounds to Charles. One of the wounds, the exit or the trajectory was down, and we pulled that projectile.
And I'm going to object, Your Honor. This testimony is based upon hearsay. He learned it from someone else.
Your Honor, I believe he's talking about his observations of the scene. I think there were other detectives there that he's referencing, if I could clarify that.
If you'll clarify, I didn't see the hearsay in that. Go ahead and clarify, Ms. Blake, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Moffat, did you go back and make observations at the scene?
Yes, I did.
And were there other detectives present when you were making the observations?
There were.
And so I think you were talking about looking at the exit wound.
Yeah, so
tell us what you observed.
we were looking at basically the evidence at the residence. As I was saying, there was 1 bullet strike that landed in the baseboard. And then there was another bullet strike under Charles's body.
And did you notice bullet strikes anywhere else in the residence?
No, besides those 2, there were none.
The bullet strike under his body, did that lead you to believe anything regarding the position of Charles' body when he was shot?
Yeah, the bullets.
I'll object, Your Honor. Speculation.
Your Honor, I think he can answer what he believed.
I think a little additional foundation would be necessary in regards to training before he could give that opinion.
How long?
Sustain the objection on those grounds for now.
How long were you a homicide detective?
I did 11 and a half years in homicide and 3 years in family crimes before that.
Have you responded out to gunshots before?
Yes, several.
Have you observed bodies that have been shot before?
Several.
Have you done trainings on bullet wounds, things of that nature?
I have. I'm currently assigned to the executive board of directors for the Arizona Homicide Investigators Association. Have been for 11 years. We conduct about 100 hours of training a year. So I have hundreds and hundreds of hours of training in homicide and related items.
And based on your training and experience, based on that mark in the floor, where did you believe Charles' body was when he was shot?
Yeah, my observations from where Charles was shot, especially when we rolled him and saw the strike underneath him, is the wound to his abdomen was what is called a shored gunshot wound. So the wound to his abdomen traveled through his abdomen and out of his shoulder, and was consistent with Charles being flat on the floor when that projectile exited his body out of his shoulder.
And was that consistent with what Alex Cox reported?
It was not.
Were you involved in transporting Lori Vallow back to the residence?
I was.
Did you make observations of Lori on the way back?
Yes, I did.
And what were those?
I'll object, Your Honor. Relevance.
That's overruled.
So Detective Inklin and I transported Tylee, Lori, and Alex back from the station to the residence while we were still processing the scene, so they could get a car and go somewhere else, or stay on scene outside of the scene, or stay at the residence outside of the scene. So Detective Inklin was driving. Tylee was in the front seat. We were in a minivan, so I was in the far back of the minivan, and Lori and Alex were sitting basically in the middle row. The ride back from the station was bizarre, to say the least. It was very lighthearted, very just conversationalist. It was, like I said, it was very different, bizarre.
At some point, did you, in your well, let me ask this. Did you continue as the case agent?
I did.
At some point, did you switch and you were no longer the case agent?
Yeah, once I was promoted to sergeant in June of 2020, I was no longer assigned to homicide, and it needed to stay with the homicide detective as I was going back to patrol. So Detective Duncan took over as case agent for me.
So, and that was based on your promotion?
Yes, ma'am.
And Detective Duncan had been involved from the initial part of the investigation?
He had since the day of the incident.
And prior to you being switched as the case agent, did you learn anything with regard to an insurance policy?
I did on
I'll
July.
object, Your Honor, based upon hearsay.
I'll sustain that.
And Your Honor, I would indicate it's not being offered for the truth of the matter, but for what was done next in the investigation.
Well, I guess the objection's being sustained because it was a question of did he learn anything, and I didn't see a foundation of how he personally would have had that information unless it was revealed through hearsay of another. Was the basis of, I think, the objection and how I ruled.
Let me have just a moment.
Yes.
Detective Moffitt, in your experience as a homicide detective, are finances oftentimes a motive for homicide?
They can be, yes.
And based on that, do you, as part of investigations, do you look into life insurance?
We do.
Did you, in fact, in this case, look into whether or not Charles Vallow had life insurance?
I did.
Did you learn whether or not he did have life insurance on himself?
He did. He had a $1 million policy.
At some point, did you learn who the beneficiary was?
I did.
And who is that?
Well, when I contacted the insurance company, there was some confusion because had been a recent change of who the beneficiary was. So initially, they weren't sure. It had been changed from Lori to Kay, Charles' sister, at a point in time a couple months prior to this event, and the legal department was reviewing the forms at the time.
Do you look into whether or not anyone attempts to make a claim shortly after someone's deceased?
Yes.
Did someone attempt to make a claim?
Yeah, and when I contacted the insurance company on
I'll
July...
object, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Overruled. You can continue to answer.
Thank you, sir. On July 17th, I believe it was on or around July 17th, I contacted the insurance company, and Lori had tried to file a claim on that $1 million policy.
Did you learn whether or not that claim was paid out?
I later did, and it was not paid out to Lori.
Just one moment. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Let's see, Mr. Archibald, will you be conducting cross?
Your Honor, I've previously objected to this testimony as in its entirety, so I don't have any questions.
All right, that'll conclude then the testimony of the witness. May the witness be excused or released from any subpoena.
Yes, Your Honor. I would ask that the witness be released.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, thank you for your testimony this morning. You can be released. And the state can call its next witness.
Thank you. The state calls Sydney Woodbury Shank.
All right, before you inquire, Mr. Wood, I just have a question or two for the witness here. Prior to coming in today, have you observed any of the trial testimony in this case in any way?
No.
Okay, thanks for that response. In your examination here, we are making a court record, so please make verbal responses to any questions, and please try to avoid speaking at the same time as anyone questioning you, so the record stays clear. With that in mind, then, Mr. Wood, you can inquire on direct.
State your name and spell your last name.
Yes, my name is Sydney Shank. Schenk.
Shank, how old are you?
I am 26 years old.
Where do you currently reside?
I currently live in Arizona.
Was there ever a time you lived in Rexburg, Idaho? Sorry, I just realized the mic wasn't on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wood.
Do I need to repeat those questions, or do you have me on the record?
Did we get it on FDR? I think there's enough to pick it up on the
Okay.
FTR, Mr. Wood, and the reporter got it apparently.
All right. Was there ever a time that you lived in Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes.
When was that?
It was back in 2019.
Okay. And what were you doing in Rexburg, Idaho?
I was attending BYU, Idaho.
Were you working at the time?
I was not.
Okay. Were you, excuse me, were you looking for work?
Yes, I was.
Okay. How were you going about doing that?
I had always nannied and babysat in the past, so I went on a website called care.com where you can place a job listing for nannying or cleaning services or senior care, like nursing stuff, and I had placed a listing to be a nanny.
Okay. Through that
Mr.
listing,
Wood, I want to make sure we get this. If you can kind of talk right into that mic, they're not
Yeah.
that sensitive, so we'll make sure to get all your testimony. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
through your listing on care.com, Did you ever meet a Lori Vallow?
I did. She had replied to my listing looking for help with her son, JJ.
Okay. So you met her through the listing. How did you communicate?
We had messaged through the app and then later continued talking through text messaging because it was easier.
Okay. So you exchanged numbers.
Yes,
Did you keep those messages?
I didn't.
Okay. After messaging with Miss Vallow, did you ever meet her?
I did. We had discussed a time for me to come kind of do an interview and see if I was a good fit for them. She had mentioned that JJ had some special needs and that he had autism, and so he required just extra help and wanted to make sure that I was a good fit.
Okay. When did you meet her?
I met with her on Wednesday, September 18th, 2019.
Okay. Where did you meet her?
I met with her at her townhome in Rexburg.
Okay. How did that interview go?
It went well. I arrived at her home and she greeted me warmly, gave me a hug, and introduced me to JJ and sort of told me about their life and that they had recently moved to Rexburg from Arizona, and that, JJ had some tendencies that he could get emotional easily, distracted, frustrated, and has trouble communicating with others, and that if you gave him a direct command and looked him in the eyes, that he would listen better.
Okay. While you were there, did she say anything about her husband, Charles Vallow?
She did. She had mentioned that he had just recently died of a heart attack, and that JJ was kind of having a hard time understanding what had happened.
Okay. So you testified that she told you about JJ and that he had some special needs. While you were there, did you see a teenage girl?
I did not.
Did she tell you anything about a daughter?
She did. She said she had a daughter that also lived in Rexburg and was attending college, and that sometimes she would come to visit them for dinner or to do laundry, but that her daughter didn't like to babysit without being paid, and that's why she needed me to come and help.
Okay. Through your interview, did she hire you to watch JJ?
Yes, she did. We had discussed a time for me to come the next day.
Okay. Really quickly, I'm going to take you back for just 1 second. When you spoke with her about her daughter, did she say which school her daughter was attending?
She did not.
Okay. Did she say college?
From what I remember, yes.
Okay. So she hired you to watch JJ.
Yes.
Did you ever have a chance to watch JJ?
I did. The following day on the 19th, I went to their townhome after I had finished my school that day and watched him for a few hours while she had to go to the airport to pick up a friend.
Okay. Did she give you any special instructions for JJ that day?
Yeah, she did. She talked about kind of what to feed him, what things he likes to do for fun, that I could take him to go play at Gravity Factory, which is like a trampoline park, and that if she got home later, I could give him his medication that helps him fall asleep faster.
Okay. What do you remember about watching JJ that day?
I remember it went pretty well. He just played outside with the neighbor friends and kids for a while. I brought him in to feed him dinner, and then he went back out to play at their house. So I went back to her townhome and waited and kind of cleaned, and then I went to go pick him up, and JJ and his friend had gotten in some sort of dispute over not sharing toys, and so I had him come home. And when he came home, he was very upset and sad that his friend didn't want to play with him anymore. He got pretty angry and like threw the ottoman and threw like a chair, and I tried to calm him down best I could, but eventually he ran upstairs and just kind of wanted to be alone and hide. So I let him stay upstairs for a while and hoping that he would calm down, but he didn't.
Okay. Did you have any other contact with Lori Vallow that night?
I did. So when she came home, he was still pretty upset, and I kind of explained to her what had happened with the friend, and she calmed him down, and her brother was there, and her friend was there now, and she had paid me in cash, and we didn't really talk much about another time to babysit just because of the situation that happened with JJ, so she paid me and I left.
Okay. Did you believe that you would be watching JJ again?
Yes, it was sort of an unspoken knowledge that I was going to work full time, like that he would need nearly daily assistance and babysitting, so.
Did you have any further communications with Lori?
I did. So a few days had passed after that, and I had texted her wondering when I could come work again. And she responded that JJ had gone to his grandparents for a month, and that she was in Hawaii for a month, and that after that month had passed, I could message her again and talk about a time to come back and babysit.
So she said JJ was with his grandparents, and he would be for a month.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever try to contact Lori Vallow again?
I did. So that month had passed, and I reached out again, and she never communicated back with me again after that.
Okay. Did you ever see JJ Vallow after September 19th?
No, I did not.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state has no further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood. Cross-examination?
So just briefly, to follow up, on September 18th when you met Lori at her home, was JJ also there?
Yes, he was.
And so you were able to observe his demeanor and his personality.
Yes.
And then when she was talking to you about him, and she was planning on having you work for her long term. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And was there a schedule, like every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, a plan like that?
Not that I remember, no.
Okay. And so it was just that you'd be called frequently as the need arose.
Yes.
And because you were a student, your schedule was flexible.
Yes.
And so you agreed to be able to provide assistance as the need arose.
Yes, that's correct.
Was it daytime, evening that you had time available?
It just depended on when my classes were. I don't remember the specific times.
Okay. And so this, the time that you spent with Lori and JJ on September 18th, you were given a lot of information about JJ so you could take care of him long term for like the next several months or a year. Was there talk about that?
There wasn't specific talk about long term, like a year, but I was, expecting at least the next several months to be able to work.
So you weren't planning on leaving town, you weren't graduating and leaving town right then that semester?
No, not for a couple years.
Okay. So with your talking with Lori, she was giving you information so that you could plan on how to take care of JJ long term.
Yes.
And with your knowledge of JJ's special needs, you agreed to that.
Yes, I did.
There was, Lori didn't give you any indication, did she, that, hey, I'm just hiring you for this week and then never again?
No, she didn't.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any redirect, Mr. Wood?
No, Your Honor, and this witness may be released from her subpoena.
All right. Any objection to the witness being released?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony this morning. You can be excused. The bailiffs will help you out of the courtroom. The state can call its next witness.
Thank you. The state would call Josh Wilson.
And, Your Honor, Spencer Rammel for the state.
All right. Before we get started with direct, I'll just inquire of the witness here. Have you observed or viewed any trial testimony in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. You haven't watched any of the coverage of it where people testified, watched any online videos, or listened to any audio, anything like that?
No, Judge.
Okay. Thank you for that response. I'll just indicate as you're testifying, please make verbal responses so we keep our record clear, and please try to avoid speaking at the same time as any attorney questioning you. So if you'll keep that in mind, then Mr. Rammel, you can inquire on direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Wilson, can I have you state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please?
David Joshua Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N.
And you go by Josh.
Correct.
Dr. Wilson, what is your current occupation?
I'm the principal at Kennedy Elementary in Rexburg, Idaho.
And how long have you been the principal at Kennedy Elementary?
For 4 years now.
Were you employed in that capacity in September of 2019?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, as a part of your employment, do you oversee and have access to records involving students?
Yes.
Does this include weekly attendance records?
Yes.
Record of correspondence between parents of students and school employees?
Yes.
Did you review and provide documentation to law enforcement of a former student of Kennedy Elementary by the name of Joshua Jackson Vallow, or JJ Vallow?
I did.
Was he a student at Kennedy Elementary?
Yes.
Who was listed as a parent for JJ Vallow?
Lori Vallow.
Do you recall the dates when he was enrolled in the school?
September 3rd of 2019 through September 24th of 2019.
So we just talked about enrollment. Do you recall the last day he was physically present at the school?
If I remember correctly, that was the Friday. the 20th of September.
Did the school receive correspondence from Lori Vallow regarding his continued attendance at the school?
Yes.
Do you recall when that correspondence was received?
Around the 24th of September.
Okay. And do you recall the contents of that email?
Yes.
What were they?
She had indicated that that they were removing JJ from school from Kennedy, and were sending him to Louisiana to be with grandparents.
And did you follow up with Ms. Vallow that day?
I did.
How did you do so?
I called her on the phone.
And do you recall what she said, if anything?
Yes. The conversation was that as soon as they got him enrolled in a school in Louisiana, that just have that school contact our school, and we would be happy to forward any records that we had on file to that school. She then indicated that they weren't going to enroll him in a school, that they were going to, in fact, homeschool, that there was a cousin with similar needs as JJ, and that so they weren't going to enroll in a school. And so I informed Ms. Vallow that whenever she re-enrolls him back into public school, just let us know. We would house the records and are available at any time that she needed.
Dr. Wilson, after that point, did any other school in Louisiana or otherwise request records of J.J. Vallow?
No.
And again, you testified that this conversation was on September 24th, 2019.
Yes.
Was J.J. Vallow present at school that day?
No.
The day prior, September 23rd, 2019, was he present at school that day?
No.
And was that day a Monday?
I believe so, yes.
So just to be clear, the last day that J.J. Vallow was physically present at Kennedy School, or Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg, Idaho, was September 20th of 2019.
Correct.
Judge, that's all I have for this witness.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rammel. Cross-examination, Mr. Archibald.
It's Dr. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. Were you present during the enrollment of JJ?
Yes.
And you remember meeting him?
Yes.
And did you have a program for special needs children?
We have, yes, we do.
And did you receive special funding for special needs children? Is that right?
Yes.
And so when you met JJ and Lori, enrolling him, was there ever any discussion, I just want to enroll him for 3 weeks and then I'm going to withdraw him?
No.
The discussion was enrolling him long term.
Correct.
That a term, a semester, a year, do you remember how long she was planning to have him there?
No, it was my understanding that they were enrolling and then going to be there for the long term.
Okay. And so when when you learned 3 weeks later that she was unenrolling him, did that surprise you?
Yes.
Okay. Because that was not what was initially talked about on September 3rd, 2019.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Judge, nothing based on that.
All right, with no redirect then, that will conclude your testimony. Dr. Wilson, any objection to him being excused or released from any subpoena?
None from the state, Your Honor.
Any objection from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thanks for your testimony this morning. You can be escorted out of the courtroom by the bailiffs. State, have another witness to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Wynn Hill.
All right, the witness sworn now. Before we commence with direct examination, I just have a few questions for you. Did you review any of the trial testimony prior to coming in this morning?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you haven't watched anything about coverage of the case involving any testimony of any other witnesses?
Nope.
Okay. With that in mind, then, I'll just ask that as you're answering questions, please talk right into that microphone so we make sure to pick your voice up. Please make verbal responses to any questions so we have a clear record, and try to avoid talking at the same time as any attorney that's questioning you. So with that in mind, Mr. Rammel, if you'd like to commence with your direct examination, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Hill, can I have you state your name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Yeah, my name is Wynn Hill, Hill.
Mr. Hill, where are you employed?
I'm employed at Brigham Young University, Idaho.
And how long have you worked at BYU, Idaho?
Nearly 17 years.
And can you tell the jury where BYU, Idaho is located?
Rexburg, Idaho.
Mr. Hill, what is your current role at BYU, Idaho?
I'm the Dean of Students at BYU, Idaho.
Does BYU, Idaho use a student management system?
We do.
Are you familiar with its student management system?
Yeah, very familiar.
How so?
Well, I'm in the student life area, and in student life we have a management system that keeps track of our students, and it's connected to the larger school system as well.
And what information does your student management system hold?
Oh, everything, but things like application information, student directory information, educational records.
And Mr. Hill, does your system allow you to look up current students attending BYU, Idaho?
It does.
Does your system allow you to look up past students that have previously attended BYU, Idaho?
Yes.
Does your system allow you to look up individuals who have applied but are not yet attending or have been admitted to BYU, Idaho?
Yes.
Did you check your student management system for a specific individual at the request of the Rexburg Police Department?
I did.
And was that in relation to a missing persons investigation?
Yes.
Who was that check for?
They asked me to check for Tylee Ryan, Tylee Cox, Lori Vallow, date of birth of 9/24/02.
And do you recall when you did that check?
Yeah, it was February 28th of 2020.
And Mr. Hill, what was the result of that check?
Yeah, there was no indication of any application started or any information on it, any of those names.
So, Mr. Hill, to be clear for the jury, Tylee Ryan, date of birth 9/24/2002, has never applied to BYU, Idaho, and has never been a student at BYU, Idaho?
Correct.
Judge, that's all I have for this witness.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rammel. Any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That will conclude the testimony of this witness then.
And, Your Honor, may this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, any objection from the defense?
No objection.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thanks for your testimony this morning. The bailiff will escort you out. Could I have a brief sidebar with counsel?
Yes, Your Honor, I was just going to request that. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we just held a brief sidebar to discuss the morning's schedule. The witnesses have been moved through pretty quickly this morning. There's another witness that's not quite here on the way, and we've also got a matter that needs to be taken up outside the presence of the jury. So for those reasons, a little earlier than normal, we are going to take our mid-morning break at this time, and then once we've concluded with that other issue and the witnesses arrived, then we will recommence with testimony of the state's next witness. So if all would please rise for the jury, we'll take the afternoon or morning break. Thank you.
All right, please.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, thank you. We're going back on the record on case CR 22-21-1624. We are in the mid-morning break. The jurors are not present at this time. I understand the state's got its next witness to call. It was brought to the court's attention that there may have been an issue with the exclusionary rule as it relates to this witness. I thought that was an issue that needed to be determined outside of the presence of the jury. So, Ms. Smith, first of all, is the next witness you're calling the witness that may have had an issue with that?
Yes, Your Honor, it's David Warwick.
Okay. My suggestion then is if you'd like to call the witness, we'll have the witness sworn, and then we'll go into the issue of whether or not the exclusionary rule's been violated in the case, and if so, what would be an appropriate response. I'll allow the defense to comment on that as well. So if you'd like to have your witness brought in and sworn, we can take it up in that approach.
Thank you, Your Honor. He's in the witness room.
All right. All right, Mr. Warwick, you've been sworn in this case and placed under oath. Before your testimony commences in front of the jury, there's an issue we need to take up. The court has previously issued an exclusionary rule in this case under Idaho Rule of Evidence 615, and the state, in good faith, I'll indicate, has brought to the court's attention there may have been some issue with that. So I'm going to permit some inquiry into that issue, allowing the state and the defense to lay a record of what may have occurred, and then the court will consider what should be an appropriate response after I've heard that testimony. So, Ms. Smith, without going into trial testimony, obviously just on the issue of the court's exclusionary rule, if you'd like to inquire, I'll have you inquire, and then I'll allow cross from the defense, but only limited in scope as to whether or not the exclusionary rule is at issue in this case. So, Ms. Smith, with that in mind, you may ask your witness questions.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay. And are you having any trouble hearing me?
No.
Okay. If at any time you have trouble hearing any of us, just let us know, okay?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter.
David Dale Warwick, W-A-R-W-I-C-K.
Okay. And Mr. Warwick, are you married?
Yes.
And who are you married to?
Melanie Gibb.
Okay. How long have you guys been married?
About 2.25 years.
Okay. Do you remember when you got married?
December 12th, 2021.
Okay. And have you testified in this proceeding before?
Yes.
Okay. And when I say this proceeding, in this case involving Ms. Vallow before?
I don't think on this one, no.
Okay. On a previous case involving Ms. Vallow?
I thought those were with Chad. I don't
Okay.
remember seeing Chad, so I did this twice, and I saw Chad.
Okay. And then did you testify at a grand jury as well?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you were given information from the prosecution staff about that the court has said you cannot view you cannot listen to trial testimony, right?
Right.
And you were given instructions that you can't discuss people's trial testimony with them, correct? All right. Did there come a situation where you listened to someone's trial testimony?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that, please?
Yes. I came down with an illness about 2 weeks ago, and Melanie didn't want to be alone up here when she came to court, and I couldn't make it that day, so I was going to drive a couple days later, but she ended up coming sooner. Anyway, so we stopped talking because she got here for 1 and 2. She was a little upset with me for not coming, and so I listened to 45 minutes of hers, but I was doing it to see how she was doing. And then 45 minutes into it, I remembered, and I shut it off.
Okay.
So I was just concerned for her and just seeing how she was doing. And I didn't have my presence of mind because I was playing Aquaman, frankly. I was breathing water, and it's just lost my presence of mind.
Okay. Because you've been sick and you're on medication.
I just got on antibiotics 2 days ago just so that I can come because I was not getting better.
Okay. So you understand that you were instructed not to do that, right?
Yes, and that's why I shut it off. I remembered, I listened to the first 45 minutes, and then I remembered, and I just shut it off.
Okay. Now, had you previously talked about this situation with your wife?
No, we haven't talked anything about the case. She lives in Arizona. I live in Utah.
Okay.
We have a distant relationship right now due to family needs. And so I knew she needed some time, so I just left her alone.
Okay.
And
Is anything you listened to, did it affect what you're going to say in this trial at all?
no,
Okay. Did anything you heard from her testimony, anything the way she was treated, anything about that going to affect your ability to be truthful and candid in questioning?
no,
Any way it's going to affect what you have to say to this jury?
not at all.
At this point, the state has nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith, for the inquiry. Either Mr. Thomas or Mr. Archibald, would you like to question the witness in regards to the issue of, again, narrow it to the scope of just the exclusionary rule, please?
So after your wife's testimony, what did you two talk about?
We didn't talk about it at all. We didn't talk at all.
You haven't talked to your wife since last week?
Nope.
And that's normal for you two?
Nope.
So where is she right now?
She's at home working in Chandler, Arizona.
And how would you know that if you haven't talked to her?
It's because that's where she lives, and I know she works. She took a week off to come, and she needed to go back. She couldn't take any more time.
So how do you know that she's not still here in Boise if you haven't talked to her?
Well, I got a text from her saying that she was done and she was going home.
Okay.
But we didn't talk. We didn't talk anything about the case.
All right.
She just told me that she's going home.
And so what did you learn from her testimony in the 45 minutes that you listened to it?
Nothing. I'll be honest with you, I was so sick. I was listening to her tones and how she was feeling, and there's nothing that stuck out to me at all. I really wasn't listening for anything, and
so you were listening for her tone of voice rather than what she actually said?
yes,
And so how was her tone of voice?
she seemed somber.
Okay. And so that's what did you listen to the direct questions or the cross-examined questions?
No, nothing on cross-examination. It was all the first 45 minutes. Whatever the first 45 minutes was about.
And where would you have accessed that information?
YouTube.
So what other articles did you pull up on YouTube?
They were just a couple relating to Melanie. And then when the one had the court, and so that's where I listened to the 45 minutes, and then that's when I recalled and shut it off.
And who posted that on YouTube?
Trying to remember which one it was. It was either Hidden Crime or something like that, or East Idaho News. I don't remember. I remember seeing headings.
Okay.
But they're right next to each other, and I'm not sure which one I.
And so what was the heading that you clicked on?
Melanie Gibb testifies in court, something like that.
And did you have to fast forward through other information to get to Melanie's testimony?
No, it was just hers.
And did you read the comments about the article?
No.
Do you get the, was this on your laptop or your cell phone?
Cell phone.
And did you download it?
No.
You just played it on YouTube?
Yes.
And did you do that with, have you done that in the past with other articles about this case?
In the past, yeah, I have in the past. Back, that was like a couple of years ago when we were dealing with stuff then.
Since you received your subpoena in this case, how many articles have you clicked on?
How many articles?
Yeah.
There was 2 on Melanie, and then there was one on Zulema and Alex back when they got married.
Okay. And those would have been articles posted by who? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I was just laying in bed or sitting in a rocker. Actually, I couldn't lay down, and I was just kind of, trying to come up with the right word.
Okay. Is that where you get most?
I was just kind of surfing, just kind of doing my time until I got up, and then when I got 45 minutes into Melanie's testimony, then my presence of mind said, "Hey, you're not supposed to be doing this," and I shut it off. Okay. And I didn't pick it up again after that.
And the other articles that you accessed, was that also on YouTube or some other format?
Objection, vague. If we could get a time frame of when he's saying he accessed those other articles.
I agree. If we can know when this occurred, Mr. Archibald, that'll be helpful.
The question was, since you received your subpoena, you told me you had received some other, accessed some other articles, right? Did you remember?
Yeah, they were all that same time frame, that same day.
Oh, the same day that you listened to Melanie's?
Yes, I was just...
You accessed other articles?
I was checking on my wife, just trying to find things on her. And then when I saw the court, I listened to that one.
Okay.
And then while she was testifying, that's when the consciousness set in and said, "You're not supposed to be doing this." And I remembered the order.
Okay. And so since you received your subpoena, have you accessed other articles about this case?
No. Excuse me.
I have just a couple quick questions because I want to make sure I understand. Once you got your, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So once you got your subpoena, and once the trial started, what have you looked at? or listened to about the trial?
Melanie, and then that one about Zulema and Alex when they got together.
Okay, so when you say an article about Zulema and Alex, was it about Zulema's testimony at trial?
No.
Okay. And when you say when Zulema and Alex, was an article referencing their marriage in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did that article have anything to do with testimony in this courtroom?
No.
Okay. Did it have anything to do with the proceedings before Judge Boyce against Lori Vallow?
No.
Okay. So in terms of what you've listened to about what has gone on from the witness stand in this case, what have you listened to about the trial testimony in this case?
Trial testimony?
Yes, sir.
Melanie. 45 minutes of Melanie, and that's it.
Okay. Did you read any articles about trial testimony?
No.
Okay. So I was just a little confused on cross-examination.
Okay.
Did anything that you've listened to with regard to trial testimony affect or have any impact on your testimony before this court?
No.
Okay. Is there anything that you've read about the proceedings before the judge that is going to affect your testimony in the courtroom?
No.
Okay. And when you say back when you said to Mr. Archibald that you had looked at some stuff back when we were going through all this, you and now your wife have been witnesses on this case since the case started in 2020 and 2021, right?
Yes.
Some of your first interviews were in 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you've given several interviews to law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay. And those interviews have been done both recording and with police reports, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've also testified in court in public at a preliminary hearing.
Yes.
And you've testified under oath before a grand jury.
Yes.
Okay. Did anything you heard about the first 45 minutes of your wife's testimony in any way change what you've testified to 2 or 3 times?
No.
Did anything that you heard from your wife's testimony for that first 45 minutes change anything you've told the police?
No.
All right. The state has nothing further.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. All right. With the record before the court, then, at this point, I'll ask if the defense has any motion as it relates to the issue of the exclusionary rule and order.
Yes, Your Honor. It's apparent that Idaho Rule of Evidence 615 has been violated, that this witness, after receiving his subpoena, did access court testimony in violation of that rule and in violation of his directions on his subpoena. So we would ask that he be excluded.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Archibald. What's the response from the state?
Your Honor, I think the court has to consider the willful nature of the conduct. The court has to consider whether there's any harm done to the witness's testimony. There is a case in Idaho directly on point, and that's State versus Danson, 113, Idaho 746. In there, the court, of course, knows it has broad latitude under Idaho Rule 615. There's no willful misconduct. It's his wife. He was checking to see how she was doing. It's one of the hazards in a trial that is recorded and televised or published across the country, that that presents significant risks to this situation happening. What is notable in this situation is the witness, when he was asked, immediately told the state and the investigators who were there. We immediately brought it to the attention of the court. This man has testified a couple of times under oath, given multiple interviews, both recorded and noted in police reports, and has been completely forthcoming. There was no willful violation of this court's order. And under State versus Danson, the court recognizes there are situations such as this where the daily proceedings are broadcast to the world at large, that the court is going to have to craft a remedy for those accidental things that happen or those inadvertent things that happen. And specifically the court's remedies, if the court is concerned about the conduct of the witness, you could craft an instruction to the jury, allowing them to consider that he has listened to portions of his wife's testimony in assessing his credibility. The court can also allow the defense counsel to do take a statement from him. We could take a break and they could do a specific statement on any other things. There's countless other remedies short of the very extreme remedy of striking that witness. And I would ask the court to use its discretion and see Mr. Warwick for what it was. It was an inadvertent way of trying to support his wife. And when he realized he was doing it the wrong way, he stopped.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Does the defense wish to make any rebuttal argument before I make a ruling?
Well, Your Honor, there's a reason that we have rules, and we don't just say, golly gee, made a mistake, my bad, no harm, no foul. That's not the language of Idaho Rule of Evidence 615. The reason that we have this rule is exactly for this predicament. He's accessing information on the internet, on YouTube. He knows he's not supposed to. His motivation for it is really irrelevant. He purposefully accessed it, and he purposefully listened to it. And he not only did that, but accessed another article regarding other people who have testified in this case. So I can understand the state saying no harm, no foul, but there's a rule, and there's a reason we have a rule, and it's to protect the integrity of the court. So I ask that he be excluded.
All right, thank you, Mr. Archibald. While the court's reviewed this situation, I've carefully considered the testimony that's been provided through the questioning of the witness. The court would note that I sua sponte issued an order for exclusion of witnesses in this case before trial started. The citation of the state in the State versus Danson case, 113 Idaho 746, does set out the analysis of the rule. Talks about, first of all, it is correct that it is within the trial court's discretion to determine the nature of any sanction that may be imposed. That also cites the State versus Christensen case, 100 Idaho 631. In the Danson case, they talk about 4 potential sanctions that could be considered, and number 1 would be citing the witness for contempt. So Mr. Warwick could be held in contempt of court for willfully disobeying a court order. Number 2 is permitting comment on the witness's non-compliance in order to reflect on his credibility. Number 3 is what the defense has requested, refusing to let the witness testify. Number 4 would not really apply here, which would be striking the witness testimony. We don't get to number 4 because the state voluntarily disclosed this to the court before the witness was called. The witness voluntarily disclosed the conduct to the state before the witness was called as well. So I have to look, I think, at the level of both conduct and whether or not this is going to interfere in the fair administration of the trial and the credibility of the witnesses who testify before this jury. In looking at the options there, I don't consider that contempt would be an appropriate response given the record before the court. So I'm looking at the other 2 options as either permitting comment on the non-compliance or refusing to let the witness testify. In this case, the state has gone through a series of questions indicating that the witness at this point states this is not affecting his testimony or what his testimony would be. The reason for the exclusionary rule, as noted in that case law, is it's to reduce the possibility of a witness shaping their testimony to conform with or rebut prior testimony of others. I don't believe at this point the conduct rises to the level to require the excusal or that the witness not be permitted to testify. What the court will do is a sanction, and I do find that the conduct was willful conduct. I think it was a willful disobedience of a court order that Mr. Warwick knew was in effect. The court's going to allow the defense, in this case, as the appropriate sanction, to permit a comment on the witness's noncompliance with the order in order to reflect on the witness's credibility. So to the extent you want to bring up what's occurred with his failure to obey the exclusionary order, that is going to be permitted on cross-examination and liberally permitted in order for the defense to allow the jurors to be aware of the conduct of the witness prior to testifying in the case. So that will be the court's determination on the ruling. I'm not going to exclude his testimony, but obviously admonish the witness that it's unfortunate that happened, and it's created this delay in our trial and proceedings, and we've had to make this ruling. However, I do appreciate you bringing the attention to the prosecutors before you were here on the stand this morning. So that's the court's determination as it relates to the motion of the defense. Do you have any questions on the court's ruling?
Our judge.
Yes. All right, we just held a brief sidebar. The court has issued its ruling on the exclusionary rule violation. Does the defense have any questions on the court's ruling or request any clarification? Mr. Archibald?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any questions from the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right, with that in mind, then let's have the jurors brought back in and we can commence with testimony.
Do you need water?
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, please. Jury's out present and counted for, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. We're back on the record after the mid-morning break. This is CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. The state has called its next witness, who has been sworn and is on the stand. Ms. Smith, if you'd like to commence with your direct examination, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please?
David Dale Warwick,
Okay. Mr. Warwick, where do you live?
Pleasant Grove, Utah.
Okay. Are you married?
Yes.
Who are you married to?
Melanie Gibb,
Okay. How long have you been married to Melanie Gibb?
about 2.25 years.
Okay. So if I'm doing the math, what year was that?
To
2021?
2021.
Okay. And do you know Lori Vallow?
Yes.
How do you know Lori Vallow?
I met her through Melanie.
Okay. Do you remember when you first met her?
Yes.
When did you first meet her?
It was down in Arizona. I was down there with Melanie, and we got a call. And she asked Melanie to bring me over. They wanted me to meet them.
Okay, so, and if at any time, I know sometimes it's hard for you to hear, right?
Yeah.
So if at any time you can't hear, I need you to let me know, all right?
Okay.
All right. So you said she wanted Melanie to bring you over to meet them. Who is she?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. And Lori Vallow wanted to meet you.
Yes.
All right. And where did you go to meet her?
To her house.
Okay. Where was that?
I believe it was Chandler, Arizona.
Okay. Was it in Arizona?
Yes, it was in Arizona.
Okay. Was she married at the time?
No.
Okay. Was she widowed?
Yes.
Okay. Who had she been married to?
Charles Vallow.
Okay. How close in time was this to that you met her? Was it to the time that Charles died?
I met her the first week of August, and I just knew Charles had died previously to that, but I wasn't sure how.
Okay.
I didn't know them.
Okay. So the first week of August of 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you met her, you went to her home in Arizona.
Yes.
Who was there at her home when you met her?
There was Chad, Alex, Melanie, I think her last name was Bordeaux at the time, and then Zulema showed up, and then another lady showed up, but I don't remember her name. She was pretty quiet.
Okay. And when you said Chad, do you mean Chad Daybell?
Yes.
Okay. So prior to August of 2019, had you ever met Chad Daybell?
Just over the phone.
Okay. How was it you talked to Chad Daybell over the phone prior to August of 2019?
A few years previous, he reached out to me and wanted to do a book with me.
And did you ever do that with him?
No.
Okay. Why not?
'Cause I didn't feel it was right, and I didn't feel like he was the one that, if it was to be done, that it should be done with.
Okay. And so at the house, at Lori Vallow's home in August of 2019, you saw Chad there.
Yes.
Okay. What happened at the house when you met Lori Vallow?
They were just sitting around the table and Lori was she was an amazing hostess. She was fixing food, and it was just kind of they were like having a social.
Okay.
And,
All right. And then did you have an opportunity to meet her again at any point after that?
yes,
Okay. Where was it you met her again?
at her apartment in Rexburg,
Okay.
Idaho.
Now, to be clear at this point, were you married to Melanie Gibb?
No,
Okay. Were you guys dating at this point?
yes.
Okay. So how did it come to be that you met Lori Vallow at her place in Rexburg, Idaho?
Melanie and Lori wanted to do a podcast with me, which was supposed to happen in Arizona, which it didn't happen. I was coming up to see Melanie, and I was coming up for the Book of Mormon conference, and I was also coming up because my son just moved to Pocatello, Idaho.
Okay.
So I just kind of took a long weekend, just kind of see everybody and just enjoy the weekend and do the podcast.
Okay. And so when you say you took a long weekend, what weekend was that?
September 2020 through the 23rd, 22nd, right in there.
Okay. Of 2019?
Yes,
Okay. And so forgive me, you were coming up for kind of three purposes?
yes.
And those three purposes were what?
To go spend some time with my son, with his family in Pocatello. They had just moved there a couple weeks previous. And then the Book of Mormon conference was there in Rexburg. And then to see Melanie.
Okay.
And to do the podcast.
Okay. When you say to do the podcast, had you participated in any of the podcast sessions that Lori Vallow and Melanie and others had done before?
No, I did some with Preparing the People, but nobody else.
Okay. And so one of the purposes was to come up and to do the podcast with Melanie, Lori. Anybody else going to participate in that podcast?
No,
Okay. Where were you supposed to record the podcast?
at Lori's apartment.
Okay. And so you came up, I believe you said September 20th, and you were going to go to Lori's to do the podcast?
Yes.
All right. Where did you stay that weekend?
Well, I was going to stay in a hotel in Idaho Falls to kind of be in the middle with everything. But Melanie called me and said, hey, don't waste money on a hotel. Lori's got an extra room here. Why don't you just come and stay here?
Okay.
And the majority of the weekend is going to be in Rexburg anyway, so I decided to stay there.
Okay. So when you got to Lori's place in Rexburg, Idaho, who was at the house, if you remember?
When I got there, Alex Cox, Melanie, Lori, and JJ.
Okay. Now, had you met JJ Vallow before that time?
No.
Okay. Do you remember what JJ was doing when you got there?
He was sitting on the couch playing with toys.
Okay. And did you interact with him at all?
Yeah, I got a Down syndrome boy, autistic, so I just sat down with him to include him. I wanted to see how he was doing and talk to him, but it was like I wasn't even there. He never acknowledged me.
Okay. Now, when you got there, did you see Tylee Ryan there at all?
No.
Did you ever see Tylee Ryan that weekend?
No, I never did. Never did see her. I never did meet her.
Okay. Were you told where she was?
I was told that she was attending Rexburg, Idaho College, and she wanted to be independent.
Okay. And who told you that?
I think it was Melanie told. If I remember, Melanie asked Lori in front of me.
Okay. And then who told you that Tylee was attending college in Rexburg
Yeah.
and wanted to be independent?
Yes.
Who said those words?
Lori.
Okay. And so after you have that interaction with JJ, did you have any other interactions with JJ that weekend?
Yeah, there was he had a cardboard box and he was cutting doors and windows out of it, making a home out of it. So I got next to him again and just tried talking to him, and but it was the same experience.
Okay.
He was very focused on that and didn't acknowledge me at all.
Okay. And did you ever see him engage with anyone?
I think he engaged with Alex once, and I can't remember what they were talking about, but it looked like a good relationship. Then he got to go outside and play with some children.
Okay.
And when he went outside, he just looked really happy.
Now, that weekend, did you see Chad Daybell at all?
Yes.
Okay. How many times did you see him, if you remember?
I would say 4 times,
Okay.
according to memory.
Okay. Can you tell us about any those interactions?
That's when he was trying to teach me about some of their beliefs. About the gathering of the 144,000 and then Satan having powers to push people out of their bodies and then the spirits being stuck. I don't know how far to go with this, but it was just some.
It's okay. I'll ask questions.
Okay.
And that's fair. And that's exactly right. If you're not sure, we'll just do question, answer, okay?
Okay.
All right. Do you need some water or anything?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw you licking your lips. All right. Now, you indicated that he started talking about beliefs and that, and the 144,000, right?
Yeah.
That's what you said. Who was present during this conversation?
Melanie and Lori.
Okay. Did Lori participate in the conversation at all about those issues?
Not that I can recall. He seemed to lead the way on that.
Okay. And did you, what was your response to Chad's, sort of concepts?
I just said, if the Lord's gathering is 144,000, I believe that would happen through his prophet. And then as far as the Satan having power to push people out of the bodies, I said, we're taught differently in that. That can't happen. He's not given that kind of power.
Okay. So let me stop you there. So you are a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I heard you say through the prophet. Are those doctrines taught through the mainstream LDS church?
Yes.
Okay. And so your response was things more in line with the teachings of your church?
Yes.
Okay. Were you sort of going along with what Chad was telling you?
I was listening, and then I questioned, and that's, I don't know what you mean by going along. I didn't.
Did you believe him?
No.
Okay. Did you let him know you didn't believe him?
Yeah.
Okay. So after that interaction, did you have any other interactions with Chad?
Yeah, he had us meet him at a property on the east side of a church.
When you say had us meet him, who was together with that situation?
Me and Melanie met with Chad and Lori at this property.
Okay. And it was next to a church?
Yes.
Okay. What happened when you met with Chad and Lori next to a church?
They just trying to tell us about that beautiful building, like a temple that was there, and that was in spirit. But so they wanted to show it to us, but I couldn't see anything.
Okay. Why did they want to show you the temple or the heavenly building they said they were seeing?
I think it tied in with things that they believed in, but I didn't know all their beliefs. Did you believe it? Could you see a building? No, I didn't believe it was there, and I couldn't see it, but I was trying to be respectful and just kind of follow along, I guess.
Okay. And then after the visit of a site, what was supposed to happen at that site where you were meeting with Chad and Lori?
We were just supposed to be able to witness it. That's all I recall.
Okay. And then Did you run into Chad Daybell again that weekend?
Yes.
Okay, where was that?
They had 80 acres that was out by his place. It was for sale. It was for development.
So why were you looking at 80 acres near Chad Daybell's property?
Well, for me personally, I had an investor down in Utah that wanted to do a development in Rexburg. So I was interested in it for that. And Chad was interested in it because he wanted me to, move up to Rexburg.
Okay. And so what did you do about going to check out that property?
Since it was Sunday, I just said, well, I don't work on Sunday, but since I'm leaving early in the morning, I said, I'll just drive by, take a picture of the realtor sign, and then I'll, deal with it later, during the work week.
Okay. So when you drove by and you took a picture, how was it? How did you get connected with Chad?
We were out there. Alex Cox led us out to the property. So we were just standing out in the field and just talking. And then Chad and some brother that he was serving within the church, they left I guess they were clerks or something, and they just left and came over to the property.
Okay.
And he said this guy was a realtor, and he said, I just want to, if you have any questions or anything, he can help you with it.
Okay, so who's he? Was that Chad with the realtor?
It was Chad with the realtor, but I don't remember the realtor's name.
Okay. And what was your response to Chad coming and showing up with the realtor at the property? I
just said, I don't do business on Sunday. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not here for that, and because I didn't know they were coming. They just showed up.
Okay. So after that interaction, did you see Chad Daybell again?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see Chad that weekend at Lori's apartment?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that situation.
That's where he came. That's where he was coming over and teaching me some of their beliefs.
Okay. Did you ever see Chad with JJ that weekend?
No.
Okay. Did you ever hear about any interactions between Chad and JJ?
I heard that he had a scuffle with JJ, and that's how he got the scratch on his neck. But I don't remember what that was about.
Okay. And when you say he got a scratch on his neck, who got a scratch on their neck?
Chad did.
Okay. During the times you saw Chad, what was his interactions like with Lori Vallow?
They were really loving with one another and affectionate.
Okay. Now, at this time, were you aware that he was still married to Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Okay. Did the fact that he was married come up at all?
Yes.
All right. How did that happen?
I asked him I just asked him how his marriage was with the Tammy and if she was a good wife, and he said he had no complaints, that she was a good wife, but he said her time was coming up, and that him and Lori were gonna go do the things that they had committed to do for God.
Okay. So when you say her time was coming up, your Tammy's time
He
was...
said he had a dream that she was going to pass away before he was 50 or by the time he was 50.
Okay. And so that was Tammy was going to pass away before Chad was 50?
Yeah, by the time Chad was 50.
Okay.
The dream was I think he said 3 years previous.
Okay. And that, and then he said he and Lori were going to be together. What did that mean?
That they were going to get married and they were going to go do their calling.
Okay. And did you know what their calling was?
That's what I learned. They were going to gather the $144,000.
And they were going to do it together?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any response to this?
That's where I just said that because he was kind of saying that I was one of them, and that's why he wanted me up there. And that's when I said, well, that would be a call from God and through his prophet.
Okay. And what was his reaction when you said it should come through the prophet? It's the prophet of the church, right?
Yeah. I can't remember all the details, but it was clear, kind of like that it was a separate calling because it was the Church of the Firstborn, which is going to be coming out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so that was his position, and he had his authority under John the Beloved, if I remember right.
Okay. And was that your belief?
No.
Okay. Now, did you do the podcast?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you do the podcast?
We did that on Sunday night.
Okay.
It was late.
All right. So that's Sunday the 22nd?
Yes.
All right. And so where did you do the podcast?
At Lori Vallow's kitchen over the island.
Okay. And when you said who's we did the podcast?
Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow.
Okay. So you're in Lori's kitchen in her home, right?
Yes.
On a Sunday evening?
Yes.
Was JJ there?
No.
Where was JJ?
Alex was babysitting him.
Okay. And was he babysitting him in the apartment or somewhere else?
At his place, his apartment.
All right. Who told you that?
Lori.
Okay.
She just wanted to have uninterruptions so we could do the podcast, so she asked him to watch him.
Okay. And did you see JJ again that evening?
Yes. About 10:30, I believe it was 10:30 at night, I heard the front door open, which was to my back. I turned around and I saw Alex carrying JJ, and JJ was asleep and his head was on his shoulder.
And Alex carried him in the house?
Yes.
Did you see where Alex went?
He took him upstairs.
Okay.
And put him in bed.
All right. Do you remember what JJ was wearing?
Seemed like it was shorts and a T-shirt, but I can't remember the colors. I almost want to say it was the camouflage shorts, if I remember right, but
okay.
All
right. So Alex, and did you see Alex leave that night?
Seemed like I heard the door open and close. I didn't turn around again. Once I knew what was going on, I just stayed focused on the podcast. But I didn't see him leave, but it seemed like I did hear the door open and close. It's the vague memory. That's
fair enough. So, where was JJ sleeping while you were staying there?
in Lori's room.
Okay. And what room were you in?
I was in JJ's room.
Okay. So did you spend that night there as well?
Yes.
All right. Did anything happen in the night?
Yeah, in the early hours of the morning, I had it was one of the worst nightmares of my life. It was very real.
Okay.
And
so let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So did Melanie come try to help you as you were waking up from that nightmare?
yes.
Okay. How did that happen? Let me do it this way. How did Melanie try to help you?
She had heard me talking in my sleep, kind of, I guess I was screaming out or calling out.
Okay.
And so she kind of helped wake me up.
Okay. And then what happened after she helped wake you up?
She said, I'm going to go get Lori, see if we can get Chad over here to give you a blessing.
Okay.
So she went, and she went to go get Lori, but she came back because she said she couldn't get anybody.
Okay. And so JJ was this in the middle of the night?
Yes, I would say it was in the early hours of the morning. I didn't have a clock there, but I know it was after midnight.
Okay. So as you were kind of waking up and coming back from the nightmare, did you see Lori Vallow at that time?
No.
Okay. Was Melanie able to get her to come help you guys?
No.
Okay. Now, the next morning, did you see JJ?
No. Excuse me.
Do you need some water?
Sorry.
No, it's all right. You okay?
Yeah.
All right. And so when you woke up the next morning, did you see JJ that morning?
I did not.
Okay. Did you make any inquiries about JJ?
Yes, I did. We went downstairs to say goodbye, and Lori was there, and she just said that JJ had an episode, and he climbed up on the cabinets, and then he climbed up on top of the fridge, and then he climbed up on top of the upper cabinets and knocked over her picture of Christ. And she just said that he was out of, she couldn't control him.
So what did she say she did?
She called Alex and had Alex come and get him.
Okay. So when she said she had Alex take JJ, what did you do?
Well, before she told me that Alex took JJ, I said, well, I'd like to see him because I wanted to make sure he was okay.
Why?
Well, because I didn't see any signs of the cabinets. There was no damage on the cabinets. There was no scuffs on the stainless steel fridge. And I just was trying to understand what was going on here. But I also, if JJ did have a problem, I'd like to give him a blessing.
Okay. And so then you ask her where he was.
Yeah.
And what did she say?
She said Alex. She had Alex come and get him.
Okay. One moment, if I may, Your Honor.
Yes.
It could.
Yeah, one moment.